Allied forces, the English, British, and Americans said, we want a piece of Berlin.
Yeah.
So it was divided in 4 pieces, Berlin was. And then it became more obvious as time went on that communism was not the same as a free country. And
and you were in the middle of this. So
they tried to starve it off to keep because there was a freeway and a train went into Berlin, so all the supplies went in.
Just cut off the supplies.
Autobahn and yeah. So they cut that off when I was in 1961.
Right when you were in it.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so I was affected in that they threatened to extend I was obligated for 2 years, and they did extend some of the guys. But by the time it was for me to get out, well, they let me get out.
They let you go. Huh.
And
that would have been a bummer if they stuck you in there.
Kept me in there longer, yeah.
Huh.
That's why I went in the military, was because I was the youngest dentist in the country, and I was single. And they always drafted young single guys first, and then before they would get married guys, as older guys. And so I was the number one. If anything happened in 1960, I'd have been drafted. And in 61, some of my classmates that went out and rented an office, bought all the dental equipment, and bought a house and a Porsche, and then had lots of payments. They got
kicked them out.
Yeah, they got drafted into the military.
Oh man.
So I went in the military as sort of an insurance policy.
So they can't. Yeah.
So that was.
That's interesting.
And the closest I got to the war was, we used to have to go to these radar sites around Alaska. It was called the DEW line, the Distant Early Warning System, because Russia on the other side of the Bering Sea, and they could come right over the pole and bomb Chicago or New York, without coming in from the oceans. And so we set up a series of radar across the northern part of Alaska called the DEW line. That was the Air Force's mission there, was to defend against the Russians. And I was sent out to St. Lawrence Island, which is 90 miles from Nome, Alaska.
Is that part of the little tail coming off of Alaska?
No,
or is that,
no, that's the Alaskan Peninsula.
Oh, okay.
This is further north. It's above the Arctic. Closer to the Arctic Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And Nome, Alaska, it's popular because they discovered gold in Alaska in 1902. There was a gold rush like in California.
Yeah, so that's what.
50 years later in Alaska. Anyway, opposite. So it's 90 miles out.
That's where you were stationed.
The Bering Sea is 130 miles across there. So we were about 40 miles from Siberia and 90 miles from Nome. That we had this air base there that picked up all the communications by radar or
from right in Siberia, right?
From Siberia, and they were doing the same to us.
Oh man.
Anyway, when I arrived there, I was just a dentist,
Yeah,
and I arrived there, and that night we were sitting in a little room about this big with there were 5 or 6 officers. Well, I was a captain, and the commander was only a major, so I was second in command.
That's cool.
But there was about 300 guys at this place, and about at least half of them were in what they call security, and they just translated the stuff that they heard and so on. So there were a lot of them were translators. And anyway, we're sitting in this officers' club, and there were civilians there too, because they had contract, like the ones that ran the antennas were Lockheed and so on, or these defense contractors, and they had officers' privileges, some of them. Anyway, we're sitting there, music's playing, popular music of the time, and then in between songs they break in and say, welcome to Radio Moscow, and tonight we want to welcome Captain Kaler to St. Lawrence Island. It was the enemy radio station we were listening to. What? And they...
What? You're like, what the heck is going on?
It got my attention.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this is the enemy that knows...
That's like how well
Yeah.
the interception
Well,
things were?
my
That is
my
scary.
mission, my
If you
mission,
hop out of your seat, I'd be like,
my
my
mission
gosh.
was not top secret or anything.
So,
you know, so, I mean,
yeah, but-
it would have been encrypted if it had been top
Mhm,
secret.
but still, that is.
Yeah.
The Russians had your
The
name
Russian
down.
had my name.
Wow, in the Moscow like radio. I
Yeah.
don't know how many Russians were listening to that. Huh.
Mm.
Was it a cool little island out there, like in like a little base? I mean, or is it like very barren and?
This major says, did you see the forest when you came in? I said, no. He said, well, tomorrow we'll take a ride out and show you the forest. So we went, this is in February, so everything is frozen.
Yeah.
So we got in this vehicle and we went out and this little ways from the base. And they're all tied together with hallways. So you can go from one building to the other without going outside. And anyway, they had a dump out there, and he stops in front of this dump, and he says, there it is, St. Lawrence National Forest. And there was an old Christmas tree out there that with all of its leaves had dropped. There's
That was the one.
there are no trees on St. Lawrence
Not a
Island.
single tree.
And there were 2,000 Eskimos there, and they had never seen a tree in their life. And to get them off, they wouldn't leave there for anything, you know.
Really?
So it's just what you get used to, you know.
Yeah, you never see a tree. You never
Yeah.
see a tree. Don't miss it if you never.
Yeah,
Don't miss what you've never had. Huh?
unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, that was.
How was it? A pretty big island? Do you remember like?
Yeah,
it was like
it's.
you know, really.
Yeah, it had a city on it. Of,
So
you know,
it was
400 or
like
500
so it was
people.
like a decently big island.
I didn't get around
Yeah,
that much.
like where
We
would you,
went
where
out-
would you where would you go?
Actually, that day we went on this snowcat. We went out on the Bering Sea looking for polar bears.
Was it totally frozen over?
Oh yeah, we could have gone clear to Siberia on the Bering Sea.
Wow,
Winter
it just
time.
totally freezes over.
That's how, you know, I think historically the
The
Asians
yeah
came across that way.
Mhm.
That's how
the
it.
migration of
They probably
ancient
came
peoples.
came through St. Lawrence Island. I don't know.
Mhm, yeah, exactly. Huh.
I have some scrimshaw, which is carved ivory from the tusks of
From the-
walrus
From up there.
from up there. I'll
Huh.
have to show you that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, shall we take a break?
All right.
Okay. Well, I haven't heard any action